Those are a bunch of letters.
All right.
You know, in there saying.
Okay, let's call the Thursday, August 5th, Webster Town Board meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Councilman Capelli. Present. Councilman Abbott.
Here.
Councilman Dean.
Here.
Councilman Cahill.
Here.
County Attorney Janessa.
Present. All right, because we have an early start tonight, usually we start at 7:30. I'm not sure if the order that we have of some of these distinguishing awards, proclamations, if the people are all in attendance. Now, in order, at first we had Missy. But Missy, you still have some people coming?
I don't know, Tom, you can go anytime that's good for your schedule, okay?
No. If you want us to hold off for like 15 more minutes.
Well,
to
that's
see-
fine, none of the people who are here now I expected.
You know what? If you didn't expect them and you have people that you were expecting,
Yeah,
let's see if they come in.
Okay, thank you.
know. So for the people that you didn't expect that came in honor of you, they get the pleasure of seeing a town board meeting. Very exciting as you're about to see. Actually, we had some good stuff tonight. The next thing that was on the agenda, and I saw Chief Holmeyer was here. Oh, he's over there. He's not behind the pillar. Is Officer Latz here, or is she coming shortly? And then there is going to be a representative or two from Monroe County.
That is correct, sir. One's here, one's on the way.
So we should hold up on that. Okay.
yes.
All right. And hey, as long as we're on with Chief, our officers Payne and Brewer.
They're with Officer Last, let me check, sir.
No. We're very flexible. We can.
Let's just move on.
Let's move on. So let's do minutes. Does the board feel as if we can slide for the floor first? Well, let's do minutes and then see if he comes back in, and then we'll do open to the floor. Okay, we're having fun. Dolly is our town clerk and submitted to the board members 2 sets of minutes. The July 15th regular town board meeting, I would make a motion that we approve those minutes. Second.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Councilwoman Capelli.
Aye. And I would move that we approve the July 22nd workshop minutes as submitted.
Second.
Councilwoman Capelli.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye. And Dolly, once again, thank you for keeping these current, because I know if you look at the board minutes that are 3 months old, I have a hard time figuring out, is that what we said? These are current. Helps my old brain. Is there anybody that would like to take the podium to speak about anything? We have a part in the town board meeting where we open the floor to the public, and each speaker is allowed up to 5 minutes to discuss what is their passion or what they would like the town board to consider. Well, I'm going to say that is not, nobody tonight is taking us up on that. Because of that, in our flexibility here, we will move on to kind of what I like to call the housekeeping portion of the town board meeting. I think Councilman Cahill was in the last few days looking at the purchase orders and bills. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I came in, I did review the bills and found them to be in order. I would move that we pay the bills as submitted by the Director of Finance.
Second?
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilwoman Capelli.
And I looked at the prepaid warrants as submitted by our Director of Finance, and I would move to make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Aye.
And by the way, since we have a crowd tonight, if our home finances had the amount of check and balances of people looking at the town bills, we would all be better for it. I know I wish I had this kind of check and balance at my home budget, to tell you the truth. But, all right, next, because Chief is not in. I'm going to propose a resolution to declare the following items as surplus transfers from the Webster Police Department. Before I need, are we retiring these, or are these being, what are we doing?
These are the service revolvers.
Ah, I should have read that. Okay. Yes, this is what we do when we have retired officers. Should have read that. So recently we have had Lieutenant Brad Fosdick retired, and we had Investigator Gretchen O'Day retired. So proposing a resolution to declare, make a motion to declare the following items as surplus transfers to the Webster Police Department. A Glock Model G45 pistol, serial number BLBD877, an item to be purchased by retired Lieutenant Brad Fosdick, and a Glock Model G45 pistol, serial number BLBD864, item to be purchased by retired Investigator Gretchen O'Day.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Aye.
Okay, moving right along. Unless Paul, you think there's any discussion on this, but it's pretty much stands on its own, right?
Yeah, I don't know much about this one,
Oh.
but it sounds like they're trading in a vehicle. The police department is trading in a vehicle.
I would like to hold off on that until the chief is back in the room, just to make sure the board understands the totality of that situation. Well, the next item up is that Dolly is our town clerk and taxes, right? Are you about to be anointed with this resolution? Or just the bond? Right. Okay. And that would make sense that you would have bonding, because a little bit of money passes through your department's hands. I think in September, 59? School taxes, yeah. Okay, well, in that case, I make a motion for the Webster Town Board to authorize the bonding of the receiver of taxes. Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Aye.
Chief,
People are here for this.
they are, we can get rid of, actually, this one last, the one above it, and then we'll go to the awards and things. The asset trading of the 2014 Ford Taurus police vehicle. Can you explain?
It's part of the fleet rotation, sir. We acquire new vehicles, trading for that vehicle, I believe it was like $2,700. So it's taken off the books officially to provide it as a trade-in for the new fleet vehicle that's being put to us.
$2,700 for some Ford.
Salvage.
I think it was like 27, sir.
Okay.
I can fact check that for you, but it's in that ballpark.
Just wanted to get your explanation.
2014, this is pretty low.
You know what they do to those guys?
I'd like to move, we declare
Thank
the
you,
following
Barry.
item as an asset traded from the Webster Police Department. One, 2014 Ford Taurus Police Patrol Vehicle, asset tag number 05680.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Okay, so I guess we're gonna now go back up to the top of the agenda. agenda. We're not quite ready for Missy yet, because we think we still have some people coming. But, Chief, are all the attendees from Monroe County, and is Officer Lass in the house? And Chief Colmeyer is going out to bring in Officer Ashley Lass. And I'm not sure who's the representative or oh, I do know who the representative is from Monroe County.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, and this is Lindsay, our
Hi,
special
Lindsay.
UI coordinator.
Lindsay. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so just to give a little background, everybody, typically every year pre-COVID, Monroe County would host a luncheon where they recognize law enforcement officers from Monroe County for a couple of different things. One is for individual officer achievement and enforcing alcohol-related offenses. So they typically look for each agency to nominate an officer to receive an award because of their outstanding effort in trying to keep our roads safe and enforce alcohol and drug-related driving offenses. So for this year, Officer Lass was nominated from our police department. And unfortunately, due to COVID, the luncheon hasn't happened. So Monroe County was gracious enough to come to us. So we thought it would be appropriate to do it at a town board meeting so that the public could participate and be part of the recognition for Officer Lass and her efforts in trying to keep our roads safe. So, you know.
And just to note as well, Officer Lass had over 20% of the DWI, DWAI arrests for Webster. So I wanted to highlight that because it's really an outstanding number, and we're very, very excited for the partnership that we have with Webster. We've got this exclusive pin for you as well.
We didn't have a luncheon, the committee decided to make pins of it, so it's something special that they get this year.
For those that don't know, I mean, there's a lot that goes into a DWI arrest or DWAI drugs arrest. It's not just that initial interaction the officer has on the side of the road. I mean, that's only step one in the process. The observations the officer makes, the tests the officer has to administer to the person that they're evaluating, all has to be documented so that further down the road, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year later, that officer can testify to their observations and the actions that happen. And when it comes down to making judgments of people's impairment, those are very, very subjective. And the officer has to be able to articulate their training and experience in a courtroom to either a judge or a jury to justify putting somebody in custody for these charges. So it's not an easy process, it's time consuming, and it takes a lot of training and experience to do. So we appreciate Officer Lass's efforts to not only be good at it, but to excel at it and represent us very well.
We actually have an award for a second officer as well, but I'll start with the department award. We do have the special award to give to Chief for the Webster Police Department as a whole. Not many people know that our Stop DWI program is actually funded entirely by fines that defendants pay when they make the choice to drive impaired. So our partnerships with law enforcement are essential because of that. And Webster, at a time and a year when it was very, very difficult to do so, really did not skip a beat with their DWI, DWAI arrests. So we wanted to present this to you, Chief. And as mentioned, last but not least, we actually have another officer, Officer Skylar Miller. If you want to accept this on his behalf, and his pin as well. But Officer Miller also did a phenomenal job with DWI, DWAI arrests. And something to note for Officer Miller is almost half of those arrests were drug impairment. And at a time when there's a lot of unknown with the legalization of marijuana, we're very fortunate to have him as a drug recognition expert in the county and to utilize those skills to keep the streets safe.
And so just record, it's actually Sergeant Miller now, so he was promoted not too long ago in recognition of his skills and abilities and what he brings to our organization. So, like Lindsay just said, the drug recognition expert component of alcohol and drug enforcement is almost scientific. I mean, it's a combination of the observations and almost medical type training when it comes to blood pressure, heart rate, things like that. So that officer has to be very skilled and stay current on their training and experience when it comes to enforcing these kinds of offenses. So we're very lucky to have a drug recognition expert in-house, and it brings a lot of value to our organization and helps keep our roads safe. So we will make sure Sergeant Miller gets the right recognition. Thanks.
I would just like to congratulate both of our officers and Sergeant Miller. But we've seen very few good things come of COVID, but in the way we do things, I think some things have improved. I attended the luncheon for the DWI Awards for many years as liaison to the police department, and I hope you can continue to do that in the years to come. But I would also hope that perhaps, well, Ginny and Lindsay don't have to come out, but we could highlight those officers who receive the awards at our board meetings to continue.
Absolutely, that's a great idea.
And you guys can come out.
Yes, you're always welcome.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chief, I don't think you're off the podium yet, are you?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
So if I could have officers Brewer and Payne come in, please. So part of the process is as people reach their retirement eligibility and move on to the next phase of life and the next step in their professional careers, we bring on new officers to keep our level of expertise and our service to the community at the highest level we can. There's two ways we can do that. One is by hiring fresh recruits and putting them in the academy and putting them through that 18-month to 36-month process of getting up to speed and getting the experience to be good at their jobs. The other option we have is to look for seasoned officers in New York State that want to come work for us and have abilities and skills and experiences that we want to improve on or that we think are going to fit our community. And these are two great examples of officers that fit that model. So Officer Tim Brewer comes to us from Ontario County after 5 years of service there. He has a very in-depth background, just like Officer Payne does, both with road patrol investigations. They bring a lot of credibility to our organization and a lot of experience. So Michael Payne comes to us from Rochester Police Department after 6 years of service there. Prior to that, he was 8 years Marine Corps, 9 years Marine Corps, and is currently serving in the Air Force Reserves also. So we gained a lot of experience, and they're just finishing up their acclimation to our organization, and within the next week or so, they'll be assigned to our first platoon, which is our night shift, out keeping our community safe. So we wanted to make sure they got to a town board meeting, and were able to be presented to the community so that they have a familiar face.
Welcome aboard, man.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you.
I was going to say, I just told them they had to have at least a 5-minute speech.
I was just saying, you had to say something, right? I mean, because we're kind of two quick things, and Chief, I know as you and I were getting in our meetings that we have periodically, that it was a pretty robust search process that ended up with the cream of the crop here. This was not, there was a lot of candidates, and they went through the process, and Tim and Mike were the ones that rose to the top, and so we're very lucky for that. And I gotta say, you know, I got a chance to, I've met Tim Brewer. The first time I met him, he had his beard, right?
Beard.
Yeah. So the second time I met him, I didn't recognize him because he had the beard off and whatever. And then the third time I met him was on the side of the road as he was attending as a police officer to a car accident that unfortunately one of my family members was in. Very minor fender bender, but I was like, Well, hello, officer. Welcome to the force. Supervisor's got a lot of kids. They drive now. What are you gonna do? But you were great. Thank you. So, and Mike, I hope I don't have to see you again the same thing. You know. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you both. Well,
Thank you.
And one other thing, they're young, and when they had the little ceremonial swearing in here, Tim was here with his little kid, right? And it was, you know, you just forget, I mean, that these guys and gals that are out there, you know, protecting us, they're, well, relative to me, they're young, but boy, they're solid. They're solid, so. What do you think, Missy?
She can read a thumbs up.
Really? Yeah, I don't want to shortchange it. I mean, we can wait till 7:30. We got a couple more.
Let's do this.
Okay. Well. Okay. Deputy Supervisor Cataldi and myself are going to make our way to the podium, and hopefully Missy will also join us. And this is a proclamation presentation for a distinguished Webster citizen, I'll call it.
So I just had a few words to say before Supervisor actually gives you the proclamation. I nominated Missy Rosenberry to be recognized at tonight's board meeting as someone who's making a difference in Webster. Missy can be seen all around town with her notebook and camera capturing various happenings and then spreading the good news in her blog known as Webster on the Web. In a time when there's so much negativity and bad news dominating the media, Missy offers a refreshing, positive view of our town. She's passionate about the community. She considers this her hobby, and a lot of people don't know this, but Missy is not paid for what she does. It's all volunteer, and that certainly speaks to her passion. She shared with me that she likes to highlight new businesses, drawing attention and customers in those first critical weeks. She has helped organizations raise money by spreading the word about fundraisers. Missy also said that her favorite stories are about people, introducing the community to interesting characters. While not in her favorite category, Missy is most proud of the blogs that she wrote following the tragedy of the fire and shootings on Christmas Eve in 2012. She said, Webster on the Web became a place for the community to share common grief, to learn of volunteer opportunities, and to hear stories about kindnesses shared. The Webster Library is showcasing 24 of Missy's photographs of the thousands that she has taken over the years. They've been chosen to represent kids, events, and community, and they'll be on display at the library until the end of August. And finally, and I got clearance to say this, okay? When Missy told her daughter about this recognition, her daughter suggested that we simply say that her mom is badass. And I think, as the mother of an adult daughter, I think that is a supreme compliment.
Yes, well, Missy, I hope you don't mind that the proclamation that you may put into a frame, whatever, we decided not to put badass in. But, you know, I mean, you can certainly, you know, but, you know, I mean, you can do some photoshopping if you'd like, all right? So, this proclamation for outstanding community service is presented to Missy Rosenberry. Whereas the town of Webster is honored to recognize citizens who demonstrate exemplary service to our community and a profound dedication to making Webster where life is worth living. And whereas while Missy Rosenberry raised her family and resided in Penfield on the border of Webster for 23 years, she found herself feeling a true affinity for Webster, where her children attended school and where she spent most of her discretionary time. And whereas with a desire to return to the small town atmosphere of her hometown of Owego, Missy and her husband Jack recently moved to the village of Webster. And whereas in 2008, Missy proposed a blog to the Democrat and Chronicle and was hired as for the non-paying position of Webster Community Blogger. She had experience in writing newsletters for various organizations, but this blog was the first opportunity to be officially published. And whereas Missy is passionate about all things in Webster, she has created an independent blog known as Webster on the Web. She chronicles stories about Webster people, businesses, and events and can be found all over Webster with her notebook and camera. Her blog is enjoyed throughout the community and beyond, reaching residents who have moved away but appreciate the updates of their hometown of Webster. And whereas Missy seeks to shine a spotlight on the unsung heroes and the hidden gems of our community, and by doing so, she spreads the spirit of positivity and community. Now, therefore it be resolved that by the power invested in me as the supervisor and on behalf of the town board, we recognize the contributions of Missy and hereby proclaim Friday, August 6, 2021 as Missy Rosenberry Day.
Missy Rosenberry Day. Don't you forget it. Wow. Well, thank you, town board. This is like a real honor. I mean, this is a real honor. And thank you very much for nominating me and for giving me this really badass thing. I want to thank my husband for being here and all of my friends, many of whom I met through the blog, and now I consider among some of my best friends. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about this blog. I've met so many people that I have become family with. Writing this blog has been a tremendous positive in my life, and I just am so grateful to have had the opportunity to spread that positive throughout the whole community. And having just retired, people, the second question they ask me is like, where are you going to travel? Or the first question they ask me. The second question is, are you still going to write your blog? Yes, I am. Now I can spend more time focusing on it. So thank you again, town board. This means a lot to me. It really does.
See, by all means, I think I know who's in the house.
I didn't want the opportunity to go on. He was on his way, but he's here now. So I wanted to take a minute and publicly acknowledge Sergeant Miller's efforts and the award he received from Scott. Like I said, when he wasn't here, I was saying the skill and experience that he brings to our organization is immense. And it brings us a lot of credibility, not only in our community, but the law enforcement community, when he's able to assist both our investigation and other agencies' investigations with his experience and his training when it comes to drug recognition and just general solid police work and now supervision that he's doing for us. So I just wanted to make sure that he got an opportunity to come up here and be recognized before we walk away.
I'm glad you did. And hey, as long as we got you, how many people, officers, have gone through this training?
The drug recognition expert, in New York State, I would put it probably less than like 3% of police officers.
Really?
There's only 20 in Monroe County that have been
It's a
trained.
huge time commitment for training, and then there's recertification, and, I mean, there's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so you think about it, there's 20 in Monroe County, and there's, I don't know, probably 1,800 police officers in Monroe County total between all the agencies.
Right.
So,
Right, there's new was rare.
yeah, 400 statewide. So it is a big commitment, but it is especially with the new legalization of marijuana and the impact that's going to have on our driving community. It's really important. Thanks. Thank you guys for your time.
last one is more of a workshop presentation thing, but it's, we wanted to leave it to the end because we have some gentlemen that came in from Maryland for this. Thank you, right, so, but we're gonna just finish up, the non-workshop presentation with a resolution, that I guess, Charlie, you would
Yeah,
like to speak to?
I passed out a memo. This is another situation where, as you know, we have quite a bit of litigation. Known as tax certiorari's, where people's assessments are challenged. Matters tried in Supreme Court. Usually they don't get to trial. Usually they're either resolved one way or the other before trial, but they are still expensive because we have to pay for experts by means of appraisals and other things of that nature. In any event, this particular case was brought by the owners of the BJ's Plaza. I call it that. The title is Webster and Partners. Now, apparently it's owned by, as of a couple months ago, Hardwood LLC. In any event, we've been working for some time with their attorneys and myself and the school district attorney, and with approval of the assessor, have come up with a resolution of this, which would incur a refund of some taxes paid for the last 2 years. And this is after we've had the property inspected and appraised, and we believe this is, including the assessor, believe this is a very good deal for everybody concerned. The cost to the town will be, in our opinion, minimal compared to what probably would happen if we went to trial. And that does not include the cost of professional fees and the time, et cetera, just the possible outcome after a judgment. So we have, again, what I consider as a good arrangement. It will require payment of 2 years without interest, without penalties, of a portion of the taxes paid, and the tax bill for the coming year will be lowered. So it's all in accordance with the memo that I've submitted to you. As you can see, it's not a huge increase percentage-wise, but again, the other party has agreed to it and we're pleased as well. So I'm going to recommend that the town board accept this and that we go forward and approve the refund. One last thing for most people, the refund does not really come out of the town treasury. It's paid by the county, and the county just basically uses it as a debit against the various funds that they give us. That's the way it works out. The school district, on the other hand, does pay directly. But this is just for us. The school district has to take care of their own.
Make a motion that based on discussion.
Jen?
Should we include the payments for 19, 20, 20, and 21? I understand the 21, 22 was to be determined, but should we include that amount?
In the resolution.
Yes.
If you want to, yeah, this is, the amount, the total amount, I didn't add it up, the total amount is 13.
Bill's gonna do that.
Oh, that is.
I should have known better, sorry, Bill, my
That's
apologies.
okay, John, not a problem. I know you don't quite understand how assessing works, so that's okay.
Separate.
I would move that, based on Charlie Genesi's descriptions and discussions with the assessor, I would say that we should refund the tax years 2019 to 2020 in the amount of $6,156.78, and tax year 2020 to 2021 in the amount of $7,422.15 as a credit to the account of Whitewater's
Webster Square.
Webster Square LLC.
Second.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Serrano?
Aye. And then, I know Bill was talking, you got it down, all of the memo, the dollar amounts, name of the place, tax parcel. they sound good on the surface, but they're tough. I think this, looking at all the facts, this is without a doubt the best course of action. So, without further ado, we have some visitors in from Baltimore. And Art, I don't know if you would like to take the podium and introduce the gentleman?
I'm going to start it out right here that, as the town is looking to a construction project at the sewer department, Rick and I have been discussing this and a little experience. I thought it'd be a good time to learn a little bit more about performance contracting and how it may or may not help us in this next project. So the good folks from Novicus, Dennis, Bob, and Lane are here to really educate us and see if it's a good fit, performance contracting as a whole.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay.
This has been one of the most enjoyable town meetings I've ever been to. I have to tell you.
Well, next week we'll be back.
Yeah.
That feels like a tough act for me to follow, but I'm gonna do my best. I'm Dennis Clough. I'm Managing Director of Infrastructure Solutions for Navitas. I'm here with my colleagues Bob Wimmer and Wayne Schutz, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit tonight. You've been working on a project at the wastewater treatment plant. You've gone through that process of the preliminary engineering report, so you have some sense of scope and scale of what needs to be accomplished there. And here in New York, you really have two different ways that you can implement the project. And I'm here to talk to you about one of those two ways, so you can really start to think about what's the best way for the town to move forward. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about turnkey project delivery with you, and I'll jump right into it. So what is turnkey project delivery? It is as simple as it sounds. This is that you have a single organization that takes responsibilities for all aspects of the project, from where you are now, from design, all the way through construction, and then into setup and performance guarantee. So how does it work here in New York? Well, the enabling legislation that it functions under is New York State Energy Law Article 9. It's actually one of the oldest pieces of legislation for this type of work in the state. It started in 1985. And this is actually a statement that's right out of its purpose, is that part of its purpose is to obtain long-term cost savings that's facilitated by prompt implementation of projects in partnership between municipalities and the private sector. So there's really three reasons why we think it makes sense for you to think about this project. The first is that you can get a faster project completion. We think it's a more effective way for you to spend your dollars, and that there's ultimately less risk to the town for you by thinking about doing it through a turnkey. So let me start with the first one here, and we'll start with faster project completion. So in order for me to sort of explain to you how it is faster, I need to take a couple minutes and talk to you about sort of the traditional way that projects are done. And that is actually just sort of that traditional municipal process, the one you typically use on all of your construction projects. It's also sometimes, you'll hear me refer to it as the design bid build process. So very quickly, I'm going to walk you through this process that you've done probably many times, but just sort of quickly. So where you are in your process is that you have done the preliminary engineering report. That is laying out scope and scale of the project that you need to do. Think of it as sort of what was the concept, what do we ultimately need to be done. Barton and LaJudas has done that for you, and it has been submitted. So your next step in the traditional process would be to hire an engineering firm to take you through the process of developing a basis of design, which is how big do the systems need to be to accomplish what needs to be accomplished in the plan. And then you go through a very linear process of 30, 60, 90, and 100% documents. The goal of this process is to create a set of documents that are ready for bidding to the contractors. That is its ultimate purpose, is to go and do the bids and to get those prices. But this is a linear process that you would go through to get to that process. The engineers will do it for you. You then go into your bidding process. So you take those, you put them out on the street, you get the bids in. Lowest responsible bidder is whom you pick to implement your projects. You award those contracts. And then you go into construction. The first step within construction is submittals and shop drawings. And what that is, in essence, is that those contractors provided you bids, and they had to pick pieces of equipment and systems that met the design. Now, those equipment vendors found out they won as part of that bid, and they have to now submit that information back to the engineer to figure out how to meet the design. What really is happening at this point is it's being redesigned at this point. So that work, so it's designed to get to bid, and now it's being redesigned for construction. Because now, where a black box on a drawing said boiler, now we know exactly which boiler is going in that spot, and all the engineering has to occur to figure out how that piece of equipment goes in that spot. That process goes back and forth between the contractors and the engineer until that works out. The equipment is purchased and it's built. It's built, you get to close out in warranty. The contractors have an obligation of 12 months of warranty to you, and 12 months and 1 day, the system is yours. So let's talk a little bit about who's responsible for each one of those sections. So as we talked about, the engineer does the engineering work. The bidding, in essence, is your responsibility. The engineer supports you on that, and then the contractors are working on delivering it. All of that makes perfect sense. The challenge, though, is that if you think about this, the people who know how to build things don't get involved until the end of the process. So all the things about site conditions, how this may get put together ultimately, those people are not involved in the process. So what sometimes will happen is that an engineer may design something that can't be built. And it could be something as simple as they've taken two buildings and put them too close together. So the equipment that needs to get in between them just can't fit. This linear process is an inefficient from a time perspective, and the people that need to be involved in the different places aren't there. So now let's compare that to the turnkey project delivery process. So again, same starting point. You have your preliminary engineering report, but instead at this point, what you do is that you select your turnkey project partner, and they go in and start a basis of design, and they're designing for constructability. And the reason for that is that the difference is that the designer is the contractor in this process. So that linearity of those being two separate roles, those people are now together in this. The other thing that is happening is that there are financial models that are built that allows this process of looking at different options to be evaluated from a financial perspective as well, balancing capital costs with long-term operating expenses. That is a very difficult process to happen in that design bid build process because the engineers are working without the contractors. Those pieces of equipment have not been selected. That's the other thing that happens in here is that when the turnkey partner is selected, now major pieces of equipment can be specified by the town. We want this system versus that system, and the contractors, I call them key trades here, but it's the structural, the mechanical bit, heating and cooling. Those contractors are selected and put on the team, so now concurrently, you're doing financial evaluation, technical design, and constructability. And this really is an iterative process that's happening by the team as a whole at this point. That then leads to the process of the town working to negotiate with the turnkey partner what is the right scope and price and performance guarantees that make sense to help the town meet their goal. All of this is occurring before a contract for construction is signed. So as this goes through, you can see that there's efficiencies of time because things can happen both iteratively and concurrently rather than that long linear process. Now, as we move into construction, one of the benefits that this process provides you is that while the turnkey contract is being awarded, you're actually working through those paperwork, you can, if you choose to, move forward with shop drawings and equipment purchase much more efficiently. The reason why is because, again, the contractor is on the team and the equipment has already been specified. So the design was actually designed around systems, not around a hypothetical system that would meet a specification, which hadn't been selected yet. So that can all happen. You move into construction, close out, and then there's a performance guarantee period on the end of this process because the turnkey partner, contractually, as I'll speak of in a few minutes, has performance guarantees that are part of the contract, and those are verified at the end. The turnkey partner has responsibility for this entire process as it goes through. So now, in comparison, you can see that the concurrency of the process can save time. But why does saving time actually matter? Well, It's a bit of an adage, but time is money. And an example of that, and Rick, I'm going to pick on you for a second, your biosolids disposal cost right now, roughly how much a month?
A month?
A month.
Oh, geez, what?
Put him on the spot.
Put me on the spot.
40,000?
Yeah,
Okay,
a little less.
a little less, so 30 to 40,000. So thinking of it from a process perspective, yes,
That's sludge hauling?
that's sludge hauling.
Okay, thank you for the
Yes.
layman here.
Thank you.
That was going concurrently.
Yes, the sludge hauling is costing you about $35,000 to $40,000 a month. So every month, that can get cut out of this time and get that system up and running saves you $35,000 to $40,000 a month. The other things, that is just sort of a little bit of the health and safety aspect of the plant, is that you have systems that are, at the end of their life, don't meet current safety standards, and are the risk of emergency repair. The faster you can get those systems improved, eliminate those risks, and provide you systems that are much more reliable moving forward. Second, it's a more cost-effective process. And so let me talk a little bit about sort of the management of the design bid build process from a contractual perspective very quickly. So you in the green circle are the town of Webster. So as you well know, you will hire in that design bid build process an engineer to do that work. That is one contractual relationship. When you then go to construction to be in accordance with Wick's law, this is a multiple prime contractor state. So as you go into that process, you are going to have 4 or possibly 5 contracts to administer as part of that construction of the project. And each one of them will have a relationship with the equipment supplier that is going to be meeting the desires of those bids. Now, one of the things I want to point out to you is look at the distance that is between you and the ultimate pieces of equipment. And the reason why that matters is because when you do this project at the end of it, Mr. Keneally and his staff have a whole new set of equipment that they have to operate, maintain for the life of the plant. The challenge in this process, and I'll explain in a second, is that it's not set up to give them the best reliable pieces of equipment. The system is designed to give them the lowest cost pieces of equipment that meet the specification as it's written in the design bid build process. In comparison, in that turnkey project delivery, you award a contract to the turnkey project partner, they hire the engineer as part of their team, and then all the rest of the people that are necessary to implement the project, with a direct relationship to the equipment and system providers. So remember back, as we talked about before, the process provides the town the ability to actually think about the exact systems and processes it wants. And the other thing is that in the one I showed you prior, all of those contractual relationships were independent of one another. There was no team there. Think of it as you had 6 individuals that had contracts and they only worried about their piece of the project. Now you have a project team that has to deliver, which is why this little arrow becomes so important. Any conflicts that occur down here, that's the turnkey project partner's problem, it's not the town's problem. In the design bid build process, it comes to you to manage those conflicts that may arise through that process because you have 6 contracts to manage. So, looking at this here, so as we were talking about before, part of the process from a pricing perspective is that management of the construction price, how much it's going to cost versus how much it's going to cost the town to operate the plant. And so in that design bid build process, where is that actually getting handled? Well, the place where that is being influenced by you is actually by the contractor, because the system is set up for them to fund. Let me start over. They are incentivized by the process to give you the lowest price. That's how they win. Lowest responsible bidder is selected. But so all they care about is figuring out how do I find the cheapest piece of equipment that can meet the specification so that I can get selected and I can deliver the job. How much it costs the town to operate that piece of equipment through that process, they don't care about at all. And it's not their fault, it's the way the system is set up. They are selected based on being the lowest responsible bidder. Low cost wins, not best life cycle costs or best financial decisions for the town wins. It's not how it's set up. Low cost wins. In this process, for turnkey partner, you have the team of people working in partnership with you working through this iterative process. So to give you an example, in this process, you may have a decision to make that says, I'll go back to the boiler. There is a boiler that is 30% more expensive than this boiler, so it's going to cost you more to build it. But over the life of it, it's going to save you 5 times as much as you paid on the first time. What decision do you want to make? That is a decision the town can make through the turnkey process. In this process here, there is no way for you to make those decisions because the system is set up where the engineer is trying to design a system that actually meets the specifications, but the contractor is incentivized to just figure out how to get you the lowest price to deliver the project. See the difference? Yes, Councilman.
How is the team selected and who selects the team?
So in this process, I will jump ahead a little bit. You will have an RFP for the selection of the project partner. At that point, what typically happens is that conversations occur between the project partner and the town about who are the contractors that have done good work for you here, that have been reliable, and who are the ones that have not. And then the turnkey partner will do a qualifications-based selection of their team members that then will come and deliver the project. Because the reason why it matters is ultimately it's the turnkey partner that has the contractual responsibility back to you, so they have to make sure that they have quality partners on their team that can deliver. You can't just go hire like 2 guys in a truck that do some work because ultimately they may not be able to deliver. Thank you for the question, and please interrupt me because I'll just get on a roll. Less risk for the town. Simplified version of the more complicated chart I showed you later. But one of the things I want to do is talk to you a little bit about the responsibilities that an engineer and a contractor has to you in that traditional design bid build process. The engineer, the responsibility they have to you is called standard of care. And what standard of care means is that that engineer will do as good of a job designing the system for you as any other engineer would do in the same situation. That's what standard of care means. They can't do any worse, they can't do any better, they would do as the industry would do. Now, no one is perfect in their work. So standard of care for the industry is typically a set of plans and specs are 90% plus accurate. They're not 100% accurate because it's 100% of plans. They're roughly 90% accurate. Now, the contractor. What does a contractor do when they're hired? Their responsibility is 100% fulfillment of the drawings as they are provided. The challenge, you can see there is 90 and 100 do not equal. So the difference in between is called the liability gap, and that liability is yours. And that is because every mistake that is on these drawings is an opportunity for the contractor to come back to you for a change order. That is the risk that you carry in that process. So that is why typically on your construction projects you have a price that the engineer has given you, and I'm going to make the assumption you also budget additional funds for change orders because they come. That is the reason why they come to you. In the turnkey project delivery process, that liability gap is removed. And the reason why is because the engineer is part of the turnkey partner team at this point. There is no contractual relationship directly to the engineer. So those problems now, a design error, now has to be managed within the team as part of that price that comes in the contract that I described earlier. So the other piece of this is that when we talk about price, that preliminary engineering report that you have, I believe has a price for the project of roughly $31 million. When in this process do you find out if that $31 million number is right? On bid day. That is when you find out, after all of that work is done, was that $31 million price right? Now what happens if it's not right? What happens if on bid day that number comes in at $33 million, for example? It's high. So you typically have a couple choices. You have the choice of doing what's called value engineering, which in essence is cutting out scope. What are the easy pieces of the project we can shave away from it so we can get ourselves back down to our bond resolution of $31 million. We can do another resolution for $33 million. I don't find people like to do that a lot. You try to get back to what you have before. The other option, though, is that you go back to the designer and you say, make it cheaper. And they go back and they redesign, which is going to be an additional cost, and then you go back through a bidding process again. That is painful for everybody involved and isn't typically what happens. But the problem here is that you have spent all of this time and money, and you hope your engineer was right. And I will tell you, in this market that we're in right now, that's a tough bet. With the supply chain issues that we're seeing, the delays that are there, that has become more complicated now than it has in the past. In this process, you have two places where you get to look at it in the turnkey. There is this financial evaluation. One of the things that happens in that process as you go through the design, this financial evaluation is constantly happening, and you get to see if your costs are trending up or trending down. So let's say that in that process there, you're trending towards $33 million. You know it way earlier in the process, and you can make much smarter decisions about how to manage that rather than going through this whole process and then finding out on bid day. The other place is that you are still in a situation of negotiating your price and scope before you enter the contract. So as we talked about before, these balances of construction price versus long-term operating expense, all of these things are decided for you before you enter into it, rather than spending potentially millions of dollars on a design to then find out if you can afford the project or not. The other piece that is important for turnkey project delivery is the performance guarantees. The enabling legislation requires the turnkey partner to provide you a guarantee for operational cost savings, new forms of revenue, and system performance guarantees. So think of that as an additional piece of coverage that you get through this delivery. The reason why that is important is when you start to think back on, in the design bid build process, the contractor only has to be with you for 12 months post-construction. If this happens, you have a partner that has much more of a long-term operational obligation back to the town to ensure that the system is operating the way it's supposed to.
And Dennis?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to take you up on the offer to stop you.
Please do.
I really want everybody to look at that screen right there. Because today is August 5th, and we've had quite a robust 40 days, I guess, because on June 24th was when Barton Lejunas and Rick and Art came in and unveiled to the town board that the phase 2 of the project was going to be $31 million we're estimating. Okay? And since then, we've had a couple of board meetings, whether regular board meetings or workshops, where we've gotten a little more granular on some of this, including tonight. And next Thursday night, the only thing we're doing in the town board workshop is really dedicated to that right there. That back on June 24th, on the surface it looked like, well, how did we go from $19.7 million on phase 2 that was done by Barton Lejunas, our engineer, back in 2016, 17, whatever, how did we get to $31 million? And then certain people in town spun it that, the town doesn't know what they're doing. Look, it went from 19.7 to 31 million.
Sure.
The reality is that there is new technology that has operational budget savings and new sources of revenue. It was actually page 37 and 38 on the PowerPoint presentation that night. And it was something that I got a little demonstrative, right, and said, we're gonna have to audit this, right, Art?
Absolutely.
And we did.
And we should.
And we're gonna present that next Thursday night. But this type of format that you're describing, no matter how skeptical we are of what is presented to us about the budget savings, like sludge hauling, the new sources of revenue, right? Everything that's encompassed on that PowerPoint presentation that is essentially came across the page and said the additional $12 million from 19.7 to 31 million, the budget savings and the additional revenues in aggregate every year paid the bonding, principal and interest, correct, Paul? Right. And year 1 shot off around $200,000 of positive cash flow, over and above. what would the town do with that? Maybe they use that to pay some of the other bonding, principal and interest, from the core 19.7, from which Art and Rick have told me, and the town board seems to know, that's a fait accompli. We gotta do that because our plant has aged out after 40 or 50 years, okay? So, that right there, I can't stress enough, when we're in the workshop next week, remember that page and performance guarantee. Because if you're skeptical like me, no matter how we peel back the onion, like, what's going to happen in the future? Will we get these savings? Will we get this revenue? You know, the future is an unknown. But if within something like this, what caught my attention, and when Art and Rick told me about this, I'm going to just tell you the reason why we put this on this agenda, which is usually a workshop, but we put it in because I thought it was important enough to present to the board this very different concept. That's the part that caught my eye. And I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. I don't think I need to respond to that.
Yeah, it wasn't a question.
So I do think to that point though, having that partner that is thinking about this just like you are as you move forward, I think is an important piece as you think about this. So, what would you do next if you decided to do this event? So your next step would obviously be you'd need to issue a request for proposals to select that turnkey project partner. This will look and feel a lot like when you do professional services, hiring of engineers. This is about finding the most qualified team to help you to move the project forward. You're not selecting the lowest responsible bidder because there is nothing in this process to price. It's not the nature of this process. You determine the criteria of which you want to select, you run through that process. You make that selection. The first contractual agreement you have with your project partner is called a project development agreement. And that is covering all of those efforts from where you are at the preliminary engineering report until you're at the point of having an agreement ready to move forward to construction. Signing the project development agreement does not obligate you to construction in the same way as hiring an engineer to do full plans and specifications doesn't force you to build that project. And then you move into the performance contract, which covers the construction and the ongoing performance verification obligations of the project. And very quickly in this graphic one last time, just to sort of show you the pieces of the projects that are associated with each of those agreements. And then as you move forward post-construction, there will be something called a support services agreement, because on these projects it is not untypical that the turnkey partner can provide services after the fact, which could be for assistance of the sludge management, or support for finding food waste in the market that then can come as additional revenue to the plant, or other things like that that may be helpful. Additional training to the staff on operations of equipment. Mr. Keneally's got that well handled. I don't know if that would be necessary, but it's just examples of that this vehicle gives you the ability to add post-construction services through the same process. So why consider it? We believe you can move more quickly to completion. It's a smart way for you to spend your money, and it helps you to manage that risk. 2 slides on that. Yes, sir?
So the first movement, the first process is to develop an RFP to select the
turnkey partner, yes, sir.
turnkey partner.
Yes.
And from that point on, the turnkey partner selects all the other parts?
Yes, so what you will typically find in the proposal stage is that the turnkey partner will have an engineering consultant. You will typically see they will come as a team together. So you would know who think of it as the prime contractor is the turnkey partner. They will have an engineer on their team. That is typically who you will see that will come, because the installation contractors is a little harder to select that early on because the scope is still undefined.
So in essence, this eliminates all but one bidding process.
Correct.
And in theory, it should also eliminate all of the change orders.
Yes, the only
There
change
should be
order,
no change order.
the change orders that exist in this process are if the town changes the scope,
Okay.
you decide you want 2 widgets instead of
Yep,
1.
okay.
The other risk that the town will always maintain are differing site conditions. Someone digs into the ground and finds an underground oil tank that nobody knew was there. You will always maintain the risk of what is under the soil, and then it's things like force majeure. It is those sort of acts of God, storms that come through. But anything from a design perspective, a design error that typically would become a change order to you, yes, sir, those are eliminated. 2 slides on Navitus, I'll go quickly. This is not the first time we've done this. We've done about $500 million of these types of projects. We spend a bunch of time focusing on sort of that interconnection between facilities, infrastructure, process, optimization, and using these collaborative project delivery approaches to delivery. And as a team, we've got experience of doing a wide variety of different projects. We've led several projects here in New York, projects up to $50 million in size. So our team brings a lot of experience to delivering these types of projects to your benefit. And with that, I'll take your questions.
How many municipalities have you done similar projects? It seems like you're like a private plus.
So I'll speak on behalf of Navitus. So as a turnkey partner, we are the prime contractor. So we take the full responsibility for these projects. So to give you an example, the bonding capacity that a contractor has, we carry that bonding and insurance responsibility on the project. So we're not merely a professional services firm providing project management. We take the contractual liability for the delivery of the project in its entirety. Okay? So for example, on the construction stage, it would be Navitus construction people in the field, running the job, managing the subs, coordinating the equipment, running the safeties on the site, all the aspects that you would expect.
And how many other municipalities throughout New York State are you currently working?
Currently
Yes.
currently working with none as of this time. At my previous employer, I had just finished the development of a $50 million project that is now in construction and had delivered a $31 million project in the Albany area.
How many companies do this kind of project management?
That do this sort of work in New York. If you were to, in my opinion, if you were to issue an RFP, there are probably a half dozen companies working in New York right now that do similar work.
How long has your company been?
10 years.
10 years, okay.
How do you get paid? Is it based on?
Thanks, Paul.
That's a great question.
The $64 question.
We are paid as most companies are paid. It's based on overhead and fee, which is all defined well, and as part of that negotiated process before the contract is signed. More questions?
Well, actually, so theoretically, the way you just described how you get paid, if it was a $31 million project, and it was linear, like you said, traditional, and the 90% engineer, and we manage, and Art is constantly managing that change order. All other things being equal is, are you paid out of that $31 million?
Yes.
Or does it become a $33 million?
No, we're paid out of 30. Yes.
So that's based upon our original estimates from, our engineer,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
So you take that and look at those designs and numbers, your engineer, and they say, yeah, we don't agree with 31, we think it's a $35 million project. What do you do then?
Well, sure.
Let me go back.
So, your example is exactly what could happen, because we'll play the hypothetical game. You issue an RFP and you select Navitus. we are going to take the preliminary engineering report that you have, that Barton and LaJuice has provided, and we're going to start right here in this iterative process of doing financial evaluation, starting the basis of design, and bringing the partners together. And the first thing we're going to do is figure out if that number is right. And if it's 35 million based on information, we come back to you in the town and say, you don't have a $31 million project. You have a $35 million project. And here's why. And we explain that to you, that information, with the point being, you now have decisions to make. Do you agree that your project really is 35 instead of 31, and you want all the things that are in it? Or, no, we've decided we will not spend more than $31 million, but we have to achieve all of the goals that the preliminary engineering report said we needed to do. Now you're in a situation of wants versus needs. You have to figure out at that point, what are the drivers that you have to get done what you need to get done? And the reason why I say it this way is not everybody will look at it the same way. If you look at it and say, we want to have no more than $31 million spent, then our job would be to figure out what is the quality of systems that you can afford for the $31, because you, as the owner, have set that as the guideline for the process to move forward. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is what we would be doing here in this part, is working with you and the team to show you where your pinch points exist for you to make smart decisions early on in that process. Those decisions are yours. Our job is to bring together that information and provide it to you and say, here, let's say it goes the other way. We look at it and say it's a $27 million project, and here's why. Or we look at it and say, the preliminary engineering report says there's 5,000 gallons a day of food waste, which you should think of accepting into the plant. We do a market evaluation and say, no, we believe 20,000 gallons a day is a better planning number. And here's why. Because we found 15 food waste haulers, or we've talked to a half dozen people that have sludge that they want to bring to you. And you start looking at that cash flow evaluation of does it make sense to spend more money on the capital side because you have more long-term financial benefit by being able to take in more waste over time. That's that long-term operating expense, cash flow issue, capital cost piece, which is all what we're looking at in that financial evaluation aspect of it.
Dennis, that example you just gave of, 5 food waste, now it should be 20. That would be foundational then to, if you're given that suggestion, you did that research, that's going to be part of the guarantee.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I think I know the answer to this, but guys got to try. Where in the process, I know in the process of the linear, the traditional,
Yes.
where we go to bond resolution.
Yes.
Where do you go to bond resolution in this process? Do you wait until you've been accepted as an RFP because you're a services, and therefore we work with you and find out, do we bond 31 million, or do you say to us, no, this is going to cost 34 million?
So, I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And what I have found is that in every situation, there's a different set of constraints that the municipality is under. Sometimes it's a consent order, sometimes it's a financial bonding capacity issue, sometimes it's, at one it was a development moratorium that they were under because the state had put them under, so no houses or businesses could connect to their system until that was lifted. In this process, you can issue that bond resolution at any time you choose. The question is, what is the information you want to have to be comfortable that you're bonding the right number? You could bond $31 million next week, and then you have just created a constraint for the project. And then the turnkey partner, and if you came back and said, it's 31 million, we're not spending a nickel more on this job. That is what it is. Now, your team now here knows that is their guardrail to work to. You're basically designing to a budget at that point. If you wanted to say, no, we want to do everything within the preliminary engineering report, and we want to look at this evaluation of capital cost versus long-term revenue potential, should I take in more sludge? Is there more outside waste that's there? And I start looking at it from like an annualized cash flow perspective, you need to allow this process to go on a little bit longer to get those pieces of the question answered.
I'm glad you just answered it that way, and so I can only imagine what Art and Rick are thinking right now. So let me throw something out here. We don't have consent orders, we don't have, what our constraints are, as I know them, okay, is that you want to get this thing so that we can immediately, when WIA opens up, whenever that is, which we're going to find out next week, we have gone to bond resolution and we can apply for what is the 25% maximum $5 million. Essentially, that's our constraint. And he already said in the linear version, another constraint we have is the linear version goes longer than this type of thing. So if we go to the linear version, we might be a year extra on having $400,000 plus of sludge, because the thing isn't built for an additional year versus his version. Is that a good way to explain our constraints?
I would agree with the constraint is looking to September, October of getting a bond resolution so we're in line for a grant.
And the locking in at 31 million, and what we said was that could come up, you want to develop this sooner to try to get those numbers more finite, but in the current traditional way we're doing it,
Rick,
you
nobody
get,
can hear you at home because you don't have the mic. Sorry.
that's okay. I'm just saying that this situation can happen in the same process either way. Because, like he said, you can get to the 31 million, and with this linear aspect, you get to the end and you're saying, sorry, you're a little farther down the road and the prices have gone up. And, so how you go about, or when you go about bonding, or through the bond resolution, I think really is just where you want it to fall out. You want it to be in line so we are in line for the waiver, or, so I don't think it matters either process.
Right. So, Mr. Supervisor, working in another community, I do understand you have to pass a bond resolution to make the applies for the grants. On another project, as the scope continued, the price increased, and that city council did a secondary bond resolution.
An amendment?
They did an amendment to it as they needed to. So there is, so yes.
There's a vehicle.
Yes, and because you have to do that bond resolution for the grant, and that bond needs to align with your preliminary engineering report, I'm not trying to speak out of turn, but I don't think that there's any task that the turnkey partner would do at any point that should impact your ability to go after the grant money. Because you do have the ability later on, let's say it goes from 31 to 33 or to 34 or even less, you can make those adjustments in the bond resolution. If you
Who
choose
develops the RFP?
to. You would.
And who in our team has that expertise?
Rick and I would work with experts in
Okay.
about that.
So what is your experience with respect to, historically, with the company that you're with, or a previous company that does exactly the same thing, and you had that experience? In comparing the municipality's preliminary engineering report to the engineering team you hired. In other words, 31, and also your engineers look at it, it's 35. What's historically, what have you found in your experience?
What we will typically, so, Bob, I may ask you to jump in on this one. I mean, how often, so Bob's our chief engineer on the group. Come to a microphone.
That's why I was figuring out which one to go to.
Sure.
Is this on?
Yes.
So engineering estimates are very much what they estimates. So usually it's about going through and finding what the assumptions were that went behind each of those components of the estimate. So in these cases, in previous cases, we've taken the two groups, put them together, and walked through how they came up with the elements of the estimate to find out where those differences occur. And very often those differences are based on the assumption of the risk that's going to go forward in the project. One firm will feel that it's a very minor potential that this would occur. Another would feel that's a much higher potential that would occur. So that's usually what it is identifying what the risk assumptions are.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from. My question is,
Sure.
historically, going through that process,
Okay.
if you come out with a higher number or a lower number.
Historically, I've come out with both, and I've come out with within the same realm. It is really very much project specific and to the assumptions that went into the project. So I can say I've been through all of them. Can't give you that perfect answer that it's always higher, it's always
It's the type of
lower.
question that doesn't have a perfect answer. Because, to give you an example, a preliminary engineering report, if you think of it just as a document, one of the other pieces that goes into it is how much did the municipality pay for that preliminary engineering report? If they paid $10,000 for it, they got $10,000 worth of work into that final report. If they paid $250,000, the level of granularity and detail that went into that report would obviously be much more significant. They'd both be called preliminary engineering reports, though, and either one of those could have been handed to us as that starting point. Is your question about the validity of the $31 million number you have now? I feel like there's a question in there that we haven't gotten to yet, Councilman.
No, my question is how you pay, and it's based upon the overall project, and there was previous preliminary engineering reports. So it's your, don't take this the wrong way, but it would seem to me it'd be more advantageous for your company, right, if it wasn't a $31 million project, it was a $35 million project. Even though we have the final say, you go to 31, or you go to 30, or we go to 35.
So one of the things that I will tell you is that the way that process is typically done is that the details of that price, whether it's 31 or 35, are outlined in detail. And then there's a negotiation process between the turnkey partner and the municipality. So you would be seeing the details about how the $31 million number was created. And then if I know the people sitting down at the end of the Diaz review, they're going to be relatively detail-oriented through that process and ensure that everything is fair and equitable before it's agreed upon. Because remember, it's a negotiated price, scope, and performance guarantees. It's not an issue of that you merely are accepting all the lowest responsible bidders. So if the town is not satisfied with the price for the scope, you won't agree to it. You won't move forward with construction until you are comfortable that the price of the project is fair and reasonable.
And I appreciate, I'm going to guess, and Bill, you're probably the most understanding of that linear thing being in the period that you were in. Although, Russ, it's a different way of looking at it, isn't it?
It's just another alternative, yes.
So, I mean,
But the question you have to all decide is whether that's the best situation for the town of Webster.
it's funny, I was telling Charlie, because Charlie's our town attorney, of course, he's like, he said, is this their project? Yes, no, I had asked Art, I had a deposition with you guys when you said, I'd like to have them in. So I asked you guys the question, I'm like, well, Art, why do we need you? Right? We got them, all right? I mean, if we're gonna just pay, nothing, if you said, hey, you gotta ask all the questions, right? I mean, we're not trying to insult anybody, but you know, obviously, I won't get into it, but the two of you would be so instrumental, well, no matter how we go, the linear approach or this approach for the performance contract like this. As I said earlier, and I think some of it'll pick up next week, it caught my attention big time because of the guarantees of revenue production and cost savings, which is really important in this thing as we move forward and say to the community, hey, guess what, we're spending $31 million. But if we can, day one, pay for the $12 million additional because of those increased revenues. That makes a lot of sense.
Day one?
Day one. Day one. That's exactly how it's laid out. It's laid out, and that's what we're going to see next week, is that Excel spreadsheet they showed us on June 24th, or whenever it was, that basically showed this is what $12 million of bonding is, and here are the other 8 columns of other additional costs, but here's the revenues we'll get, sludge hauling savings, and we add it all up. Day one, we pay for $12 million of the bonding and interest annually. And it kicks off almost another $200,000 of cash flow. What do we want to do with that $200,000 in cash flow? Maybe we should slam it right into another $4 or $5 million of bond payments that are associated with the $19.7 million part of the project that we somewhat are, that we have to, right? You know, it's a new concept to all of us. So, you know, it's something that, and we're, you know, there's a reason why since June 24th, almost every single board meeting, there has been a presentation on sewer. I don't know about you guys, but $31 million is nothing to take laying down. So this board has got to keep the momentum going and getting educated on this, asking the tough questions. Because as we said on June 20, well, no, it was, what was the board meeting where, it was at the workshop or whatever, we said, yeah, when Pete Baker got up here from Barton and Judas and said, here's the schedule, and it culminates in mid-September with us doing a bond resolution for $31 million. And I said, wow, mid-September? It's a month and a half away. Yeah, let's do it. And I don't say that flippantly. There's reasons why we would do it. Well, I think in the next 45 days, we need to invest a lot of time as a board into looking at these things. I don't want to all of a sudden leave that meeting 2 weeks ago and say, well, we all agreed we're going to bond it for $31 million and go with the linear thing. Because, yeah, that's $31 million, whatever. No, we're going to overturn every stone in that one. And I'm going to be unapologetic about that. Because I haven't been involved with this that long. You've been with the town for 50 years, right? When was the last time the town did a $31 million project, Barry?
Never.
Thank you. Unprecedented. So, we will have unprecedented due diligence going into this. And that's why, thank you for coming up from Baltimore. This is not what we do at regular town board meetings. This is a workshop presentation. And workshop presentations at our town board meetings usually are 15-minute increments. I think we are right at an hour now. Actions speak louder than words. We are going to put in the time and overturn every stone on how to do this. If we're going to do the bond resolution in mid-September, the board will have a better idea at that point. Are we moving forward now as we wait for the WEA portal to open up with the linear version, which we're all comfortable with, so wait's been done forever, or have we gotten enough information from this presentation and subsequent questions and this and that, whatever, that we decide to go this route? I don't have that answer yet. It's been a great presentation, by the way. I hope can we get that? Yes. Thank you. I, for one, will have many other questions for you guys. Maybe you can get a Zoom meeting. It won't make you come back up here from Baltimore.
It's a lovely drive.
It is a lovely drive, all right? But there might be some more, you know, Rick and Art, careful what you ask for. You ask me, can we have them in? Yes. Okay.
It's doing exactly what we wanted it to do. We're all learning about it, and it's driving questions.
And just to throw this out there, my short term in Rome, I have had experience with 2 performance contracts. One the city did, one a new mayor came in and decided to, which we were moving forward with it, decided to go a different route. So I have some familiarity with this type of project delivery. So if there's any questions,
And
from my aspect, I am.
thank you. And you know what?
Presentation with your company name and stuff like that to Tom, and you can forward.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yes.
And I was telling Charlie when he leaned over and said, what is it? And I said, you can't make this up. My brother owns an energy company, and 85% of their revenue is through NYSERDA, if you're familiar with that, all right? So I go to him, and he's won awards and stuff like that. He's pretty good, all right? I'm biased about it, but these are tangible, objective awards, not just, you know, whatever. He sends me an email a couple days ago and he goes, "Hey, what is it called? Article 9? Not Article 9. Article 9, he goes, look at this, and he showed me what something he's doing with the town of Perry, this little town south of here, or whatever, where they're getting into this Article 9 performance contract. And he said, you know, you gotta take a look at this, because this might be a concept that the town of Webster could really benefit from. I've had no discussion with him about this. 2 days ago he sent it. So we're looking at it.
Any additional questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation.
And since it's not a workshop, we gotta finish.
I don't know if you
the
guys
board
know this or not, but for 5 decades, Rochester Red Wings were the AAA farm team for the Baltimore Orioles. I used to love the Orioles. And when they went in a different direction, I said goodbye.
And
We had so many players played right here in Rock, Boo Powell, Bobby Rich, Don Baylor, all started out here in Rochester.
Cal Ripken.
Cal Ripken, my goodness.
So he was here a month.
Yeah.
Well, he was here for the summer, not long, but yeah.
The board has been here since 4:30 today, because we had a workshop for
Right.
a project, so it's been a long afternoon and night. I would say, before I do the ballot and end the meeting, the public will, I'll put it, take it off, do not disturb. If the public wants to call in, we'll have it open for a minute or two, and just do our round table, anything you want to say. Rick? You got it?
All good. But again, any questions from my angle, from my experiences are with this type of project delivery?
And you know what, Rick? I'll say something for you. You coming into this town and being a chief plant operator with your 4A license and bringing in with your experience on NIWEA, which is the acronym of that or whatever, you have brought in a global perspective to the sewer plant and processing collections that never has been in this town prior. Nothing personal.
No, I completely agree.
And we're not having this presentation tonight if it isn't for what you've experienced in your own professional, what you did in Rome, but also from being in NIWEA and what you've seen and you've been published in articles in the magazine. We hit a home run.
You are really something.
Somebody.
I guess.
You are something. Can we shut him up now?
Thank you.
All right? Yeah,
Next
well,
meeting,
you
I'll
know.
get your crown.
That's right. I didn't call him a guiding light though, did I? Huh? Art?
Trying to enhance your self-esteem, Tom.
Harry?
If I say anything, are you gonna talk more?
Of course you do.
No.
Don't you say that though. Paul?
Well, we finished our second budget workshop meeting a couple of hours ago, so our budget's in pretty good shape. We're under the tax cap, but we'll still massage it a little bit over the next few weeks.
John?
Good night.
Good night. Patty?
I have a Councilman Cahill comment. I thought there was gonna be pizza tonight. It's time for dinner.
He provide dinner for you?
I didn't, no, you know what?
Keep them here from 4 o'clock till now, and they haven't had any dinner. There you go, Bill.
Water.
I'm still.
Yeesh.
Charlie, that means nothing. Okay.
I've gone through 2 bottles of water.
Charlie's all set. Nobody called in, they must have answered all the
Bye-bye,
questions.
good luck.
So this meeting is officially adjourned.
Everybody.
And I'm really embarrassed, I think it's 9 o'clock.
When you walked in, we just.